The surprise general election in June 2017 was a case study in political overconfidence. Theresa May calculated her chances of securing a big Commons majority were so strong and Labour so weak that she called the election. She was urged by the Daily Mail newspaper to crush the saboteurs, strengthen her negotiating hand in Brussels and claim her own personal mandate to implement Brexit, liberating her once and for all from the Remainers. But it all went horribly wrong.
Theresa May lost the majority won by David Cameron in 2015, while the supposedly unelectable Corbyn claimed 40% of the vote. Mrs May was forced to buy the parliamentary support of the small Democratic Unionist Party with taxpayers' money so she could stay in office. It was one of the biggest upsets in British political history. Today, according to the polling company YouGov, Theresa May is almost as unpopular as Jeremy Corbyn was before the start of the 2017 election campaign, when the Conservative lead over Labour was more than 20 points. An extraordinary graph plotting the popularity of both parties and their leaders over the last 12 months shows a remarkable reversal in fortunes between Labour and the Conservatives in the weeks before the general election.
Why is Labour gaining support while the Conservatives seem to be losing it? And what can Jeremy Corbyn achieve that Theresa May can't? Simple questions with important answers. Let's start with this. Jeremy Corbyn stated there will probably be another election in the next 12 months. We will probably win. What does the British public think about this statement and why? We asked them.
I'd love that to happen. I think if Jeremy Corbyn was the Prime Minister, we'd be a much better country, be a much nicer country. We'd be a much more welcoming country. We'd be a country that I'd like to live in a lot more.
I mean, he might win. It's really annoying because, you know, Theresa May's not really got a grip on what's really going on, but no one really wants to be Prime Minister because nobody wants to deal with the whole Brexit process, so I don't know.
I don't think his statement is correct, and I don't think the public is ready for another snap election after all that we've gone through. We'll wait for 2021.
I don't think there'll be an election in 12 months' time. I think that Brexit will go ahead, that Europe is so determined to sell us their goods, we will get a reasonable deal.
The sooner the better, and I hope he does win.
I think he's chatting rubbish. I don't think he's going to win. But there might be another election in the next 12 months. I'm not hugely into politics, but from what I know, it doesn't surprise me that there might be an election. Whether he'll win or not, I'm really not too sure, but I doubt it.
50-50 at the moment.
Why would you give him those odds?
Well, the last election was pretty close, and I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's done anything since the last election that would necessarily increase his mandate.
I'm not convinced. I feel that he's still an unknown quantity from a large electorate. I think he's still got work to do there.
I think he's being optimistic. The previous government, about 7 years ago, enacted something called the Fixed Term Parliament Act, so that the government needs to have a vote of no confidence before you can possibly have an election. And that would require either the Northern Ireland MPs who are propping it up at the moment to defect from the government. And at the moment they have a wonderfully strategic position. The government depends on them. Why would they end that and go into an election where they will almost certainly lose that position? Internally there could be a split in the Tories, but then they know that if they do that and vote against their own government, they will be precipitating a general election in which many of them will lose their seats. So why would they do that? So I think Jeremy Corbyn is being optimistic in thinking that there will be another election. If there is another election, if the Tory splits become nothing that you can do anything about and they have to go, then probably he will win and Labour will win, and that would be great. But it's not. It's rather unlikely.
I think that his statement is basically correct. I'd be very, very surprised if the government can hang on for more than another year, despite its attempts to keep itself together, support from the Unionists in Northern Ireland, despite its big support still in the media. It is a government which has no legitimacy. Already in the new year, we're in crisis over the health service, over housing and the homeless people, over all sorts of different questions. And I think as soon as the Parliament comes back, we'll see more of that. So I think he's probably right. Whether Labour will win an overall majority or just be the largest party, I think it definitely will be in a position to form a government.
Jeremy Corbyn's personal approval ratings have increased from a low of -42 to the comparatively encouraging heights of 0. Why is the Conservative Party losing popularity while Corbyn is gaining it? We put that to the public.
They're a country of... the Conservative Party is a party of old people. They're dying out. Eventually, hopefully, they'll be gone. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn is the party of young people. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of them.
I think it's because he bridged the gap between... He got the young people to vote, basically, and I think a lot of his messages were appealing to them. Whereas the Conservatives, I think what they did was they went and called a snap election too early, and everyone thought, well, actually, we know what you're trying to do here. You're trying to, you're trying to strengthen your hand. And I think people just got a bit annoyed about how many elections were going on. And they've been in power for, 8 years? They've lost the Prime Minister. We're about to leave the European Union. I think people were just like, this is too much now.
I think any party in office finds it a bit of a struggle because, people want to change a scene and whatever. But there's no doubt that Theresa May only just won the last election. And I was amazed at the fact that she wasn't out there campaigning. She seemed to feel she got it in the bag. Her advisors told her that. And of course she hadn't. I mean, when I saw people running up a hill to hear Jeremy Corbyn speak, who, let's face it, had not had a lot of standing before then, I thought this guy might just win it.
Because they aren't running a country for everyone in this country. They're not serving people in any way that I believe in anyway.
I think Jeremy Corbyn is a conviction politician. I think he really believes what he says. I don't think it's viable a lot of the time, but I think he comes across as that. I think the Conservatives are seen as being the same. We've been in power for a while, or they've been in power for a while, and they are seen to be old news. So maybe it's time for something different.
I think it's mainly to do with the issue around Brexit, and I think that people feel a little bit undermined, the British public feel a little bit undermined by certain things. Without sounding awful, I just think that situation's got a bit out of hand.
I think it's relative, and I think Corbyn is seen as somebody making attractive promises and also seen as somebody who's got a fair amount of integrity, whereas the government in power, not delivering on some of their agenda, not seen to be following through on their promises, so they're going down in people's opinion.
I think in the last election we saw Theresa May not perform well on the hustings. Perhaps not as charismatic as predecessors, and probably a good back office person, but not having the charisma or the personality really to to come through the electorate.
Well, they have no new ideas. The large parts of the population are suffering from globalization and soon from Brexit, and they really have no idea what to do about it. There's also incompetence. They're messing up big time all over the place, and there's a smell of defeat about them. So that spreads. The population gets to recognize a loser when they see it. To me, the interesting question is, why isn't Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party 20 points ahead under these circumstances? They're not. They're ahead, but not much, and it's not been going up recently. And I think there are two reasons. One is there is an absolutely biased press and media in this country in which the Labour Party has a hard job making its voice heard. And the second is older people tend to be worried about change and have bought into the worries about Corbyn rather more than they should. But don't worry about that because we're dying out. And so that soon there will be more young people and less older ones. But I think that it will work in the end.
I think that Theresa May is deeply unpopular. I think people saw what she was really like during the election campaign. They don't like the Tory policies. There's lots and lots of signs that austerity is becoming more and more unpopular. the various crises that are going on. I think people feel that nothing works, that privatisation doesn't work, all the things that they stand for, the inequality. So I think these are the basic reasons. I think people are increasingly fed up, and that all the time the Tories talk about Brexit, but actually what they're not talking about is the day-to-day problems that people are facing, whether there's Brexit or not. So for all these reasons, I think they're very unpopular.
Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill were not the only trusted advisers who abandoned May. We asked the public why they felt Conservative advisers are abandoning the Prime Minister at such a crucial time.
She doesn't know what she's doing. None of the government know what they're doing. They're awful, awful people. Let's get rid of them.
Because nobody, I don't know, Brexit's like a poison chalice. It's like that. It's like you really want a piece of cake and you go and get the cake and then you find out that the cake doesn't taste that nice. And I think people just realise that because her popularity is so low, why are we going to stay around with her? We'll just wait around until Boris Johnson or Michael Gove or whoever else wants to take it will take it.
It's because maybe I would say they are Remainers, and Remainers in a party still want to have their way, and Brexiters want to have their way. So they have one voice to back her. It was still going to be difficult for her.
I think the boot's on the other foot, really. And the advice she got before the election was appalling. It really was. They told her she'd won it. Nearly didn't.
Probably because they don't want to be associated with a failing government.
I think they had to leave because they totally ballsed up the last election for Theresa May. I think that they were seen to not have organised it well and resting on the laurels of her opinion polls, which were hugely high, thinking they didn't have to do very much, not answering to the public.
I think she's given some empty promises. I think all politicians do to an extent, but I think she has in a big way. I think she's let people down, and I think people don't trust what she's got to say.
Well, if they can't support her, in what she's doing, it's probably best for them to move away.
Unfortunately, I think there's a fair amount of spin, but I can't see that she's actually achieved anything. I think so far the EU have had everything their own way, so every single red line that she's supposed to have put forward hasn't been adhered to. I don't think they've achieved anything so far. They've really kind of only focused on the exit deal. It's what happens after the exit deal. In other words, the relationship going forward that matters. That's far harder than the exit deal. The exit deal, probably there's nothing much to negotiate in any case.
It may be that they feel that their work there is done and that there's more opportunities elsewhere. That's where the future lies.
She's not exactly breaking away from them. Her major error, of course, was calling an election which she failed to win, and taking total possession of that. And then, of course, somebody had, when it all went pear-shaped, somebody had to carry the can. So naturally, the two advisors had to go because May herself couldn't go. So the other advisors, other people are resigning, but it's not because of any decision of theirs or even of Theresa May's. It's because these are people who were caught out misbehaving and misbehaving sexually, and therefore they were forced to go. But the general effect of chaos is clearly visible. I think Theresa May is staying in place despite the loss of everybody around her, because there is no, the people who might replace her are all pygmies. They are people of no stature. And in fact, some of them are slightly crazy pygmies. But the Tory party is hanging on to Theresa May because the alternatives are bad, and actually nobody really wants to be sitting in the seat of government when the pigeons come home to for Brexit. Nobody wants to own Brexit, so Theresa May is going to have to do it.
If I were a Tory advisor, I would be thinking, what is going to be the future of this government? And it doesn't look good. And being too closely associated with Theresa May herself, or indeed with her policies, is not good. So this is a kind of situation where they can see that the future isn't going to be bright, that the Tories will probably be in opposition whenever the election is, even if they have to wait a few years. So I don't think anybody's got much confidence that the Tories are the future at the moment, and therefore there's more and more, including even in big business, who are looking towards a Labour government, even though they don't like Corbyn and they don't like many of Corbyn's policies. They think that maybe they can moderate these policies. and that they'd prefer a Labour government because the Tories are becoming so... they're a bad joke, really, the Tory government.
Jeremy Corbyn's personal approval ratings have increased from a historic low of -42 to the relatively positive level of 0. Meanwhile, the public's opinion on Theresa May has dropped from +10 to -34%. In December 2017, a poll by the firm ICM put the Conservative poll rating at 41%, compared to 42% for Labour. Electorally speaking, it's too close to call.
How well is Theresa May handling Brexit? And what does the public hope will happen next?
I think the fact that Brexit happened at all was shocking. I think how they're now handling it isn't really a surprise. It was always going to be a total mess. At the moment, it's all that the government's really focusing on, so we're not actually getting anything done, which we need domestic policy changes in this country, and they're not happening because everyone's focusing on Brexit. So it's all a mess, and I'm really unhappy about it.
How do you even handle Brexit? Like, no one really knows what's going on. She doesn't really know what's going on. She's getting snaked at every corner. She's handling it as anyone else would handle it. It would just, whoever was in charge of Brexit wouldn't be doing a good job, basically, because nobody knows how it would all work out. So it's like that thing out of Monty Python where people just go around like chopping off his arms and legs, and he's like, oh, it's just a flesh wound, it will carry on. So
I think she's doing fine, but she needs to be stronger and stand up to the EU.
I think that initially Europe was so appalled by the fact that we'd voted to leave that they wanted to go out and punish us. And let's face it, the EU is run for the benefit of France and Germany. And they wanted to punish us, but slowly, they realised they're going to have to make some kind of accord with us because we will be leaving.
I think the media is giving her a hard time. I think that the media has always been very critical of Brexit, basically. I think she's doing as well as anybody can be expected. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I don't think I've ever thought it was going to be easy.
I'm not that impressed with how she's handling it. I don't think she's doing a very good job, and I think people don't have trust in what she says and what she says she's going to do. Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what she's doing, but I think maybe the vote to go out was not the right thing.
I think it's been as handled as well as we could expect at the moment, given that the challenges and the immensity of it all. I think probably you've got to give it to her for sticking with it and being resilient and toughen it through, but then there isn't much choice as regards an alternative at the moment, so I think she's stuck with it.
Well, Theresa May, in my view, is really a rather good and very serious departmental minister. She insists on mastering her brief. She won't come to any conclusions, so she's understood personally, not just from advisors, the whole complexity of the situation, and then she comes to a conclusion, and then she doesn't listen to anybody else because she's made up her mind. You can do that just about in a department of government. You can't do it as Prime Minister because stuff is happening all the time. You have to be able to react to it and respond and keep the whole picture in your head while you're trying to react to this thing. So it doesn't work. And she's been trying to use that as Prime Minister. She's been trying to use it on the Brexit negotiations. So that's why we don't know what the government really wants, because she is waiting to come to her own conclusion, meanwhile keeping it all internally. She's not going out to the British public. They don't know what she thinks. She's not interacting meaningfully with the European counterparts because she doesn't know what she wants. And the result is that where she should be working her way towards an answer by interacting with people, she's got it all in her head, but that's not the way you do politics at this level.
My view is that people voted for Brexit and that should be respected. I've always had that view, and I think that's the view that Jeremy Corbyn has, and I welcome that. I think that it was a very big vote by a very large number of people and it should be accepted. However, I think that anybody who looks at what the Tories are doing know that firstly, this is a Brexit for the rich and powerful, not for the ordinary working people of this country, and that secondly they are making a most gigantic mess even of the negotiations. So it seems to me what we should be saying about Brexit is not is Brexit going to happen, but what kind of Brexit do we want? Do we want a Brexit where there's a lot of investment in housing and jobs and education and the things that people need? Or do we want a Brexit where it becomes a kind of low tax economy which benefits big business and offshore tax haven? This is what some of the Tories would like.
What can Jeremy Corbyn bring to the table that Theresa May can't? Here's the public's view.
Jeremy Corbyn cares about the common person on the ground. He doesn't want to cut disability benefit. He doesn't want to take away people's livelihoods. So I'd like to think that Jeremy Corbyn could bring us a country which is more together, which is more outward looking and a lot more friendly.
He's got good energy. He's got a bit more vigor about him than Theresa May. Theresa May looks like she's really uncomfortable with her public speaking, and Jeremy Corbyn's got better at becoming a bit more of a politician rather than just galvanising people. So he's got that going for him. He's got the young vote on his side, and being in the opposition is a lot easier when it's Brexit as well, because you can just tear the government to shreds while you sit there and do nothing. So he's got all of that going for him. But if he does get in power, then it's going to be so hard for him.
Maybe because he has the backing of all the Labour Party and they are united behind him, he might do better.
I think he would do something for the homeless, and he would also do something for the housing market so that young people had a chance to get on the housing ladder, which is so important. It was tough in my day. It's even tougher now.
They need to get a clearer picture than they've... Well, Keir Starmer has a clearer picture on Brexit. They've got to get that together on that. But there are so many. They tick so many boxes for me that I don't want to nitpick on that one particularly. They are so ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think he'd probably be a bit better than Theresa May, marginally better, but I don't know what he's going to bring to the table. I just think that people have got a bit more trust and they kind of think what he says goes a bit more than Theresa May, really. I don't think people trust her.
I think he needs to first of all reveal to the electorate what his position is on Brexit, because it seems to be a bit ambiguous, and he's playing his cards close to the chest on that one. So I think a lot of people can't really quite fathom out, where his position lies on that one.
Well, on Brexit, I think he can bring to the table a party that is divided, but much less divided than the Tories, and it matters less to the Labour Party on the whole than it does to the Tories. And he has an open disposition. He listens, he talks, and I think he can be more flexible, therefore, than Theresa May has shown. In more general terms, he offers an approach which is of someone who is open, available, empathises with the problems of ordinary people and can relate to them, and they recognise him as one of their own. What he offers to the country as a whole, I think, is hope, and the idea that we don't have to be in this mess. There are things we can do to get out of it, and that, I think, is his main appeal.
Jeremy Corbyn is a very principled politician. He's a very left-wing politician. He stands for things which, if you look at opinion polls, leaving aside what people think of the parties, if you look at the issues, public ownership, higher minimum wage, decent education, decent health service, these are things that lots and lots of people in this country subscribe to. So I think Jeremy Corbyn would say something very, very different from either what Theresa May says or from what Tony Blair said or Gordon Brown when they were Prime Minister. And I think that people would really welcome that. There has to be a very big change in British society if it's not going to continue to see its services decline, its public sector decline, and the welfare of its population declining.
Jeremy Corbyn risked being accused of arrogance after declaring he will be in Downing Street next year. The Labour leader said they would win an election and that he was ready to be Prime Minister tomorrow. He claimed, "There will probably be another election in the next 12 months. We will probably win."
Whether or not there is an election, approval ratings for Theresa May have dipped to record lows. The reality is that Corbyn could win the next general election, while Theresa May and her minority government continue to live with the consequences of one of the worst electoral decisions in British political history.